Hi and welcome. Okay, now before we get into this lesson, I want you to be analyzing this scenario and what would you do? So imagine that you're the leader, you're the manager in the business. What would you do if this situation presented to you? Okay, so you're my management consultant and you're working in, this is my coffee shop. What a great coffee shop it is as well. Okay, so here was some information that was presented to me. So in year one, we had 100,000 sales. That's pretty good. But this year, we have 50,000. Number of complaints have grown from only 10 to now 1,000. My profit figures have come down from 100,000 to only 5,000. And my rates of staff absenteeism have gone from 5% up to 50%. Now, if you were my consultant, what would you advise that I do? What strategies come to your head about solving the problem that I have right now? Now, I'm thinking straight off the top of your head, you've probably come up maybe like, okay, there's some problems here. Maybe it's about training the staff to perform better. Or maybe our supplies are arriving late. Or we've got a manager that's being a bit brutal or assertive and staff are leaving, so they're being taking absent days. All of those things are probably crossing your mind, and that's what we're going to drill into. We're looking for management strategies to solve some of the problems that we're occurring, so we can implement change as a result of that. So this lesson is going to be broken into 3 parts. We're going to take each of the section. As you'll see, there's quite a few dot points here, but these are management strategies to respond to the key performance indicators, KPIs. So you can see from the study design, there's a lot of dot points here, okay? And we're going to break it apart, but hopefully straight away you can go, hang on a minute, I've seen some of this material before in Unit 3. We've talked about training and motivation strategies before. Absolutely. Okay. So you're going to capture that knowledge. We're going to build on the foundations you already have and then see how we can apply them as strategies to respond to these key performance indicators. So in this lesson, we're going to look at staff training, staff motivation, changing management styles and skills, and cost cutting. So let's first of all look at staff training. Now, for a lot of you, you've heard all about this. And if you want to have more detail, go to this link here about employee training 2G. The lesson will cover a lot more about staff training. But a lot of you will come back, okay, there was on the job and off the job. Yes, I remember that. This is about giving workers skills to perform their tasks better. Okay, so if we give them those skills, how is that going to help respond to some of these key performance indicators? So let's imagine we are still in that cafe business. So I've got a sole trader cafe business going along. I'm a very happy person over the corner here. Okay. And in come these key performance indicators. What would we do? And we want to be thinking like sort of a bit of a detective sleuth. What are the indicators probably telling us? And then what strategies can we use to respond to those? So you're going to see I'm going to step this journey out. So let's take the first scenario here where we have a high number of customer complaints. It was 5,000, it's now 100,000 complaints in my cafe. Clearly not a good thing. Why is that possibly occurring? Now, one of the reasons might be that staff quality is down, that the customer service that people are receiving is pretty low, okay? And so they're not happy and they're making a complaint. So if my staff are underperforming and don't have good customer skills, well, then the strategy of staff training can help to resolve that. So the idea being, if we give them better understanding of customer service and we give them some training programs, then hopefully the impact will be improved customer service and happier customers. And we've solved the initial problem. So you can see this is like storytelling. We want to take the key performance indicator. What is it telling us? How is this strategy that we're going to look at, in this case staff training, going to help to resolve that, and what impact that will have? Now, that's a classic developed answer that you're going to use in maybe a SAC or the examination to apply your knowledge. Okay, so we'll take another one, and then you can do the next one for yourself. Okay, so the next one, let's pretend that my key performance is coming in, and I've got low productivity rates, okay, low net profit figures, and a high level of wastage. First of all, I want to be thinking, why is that possibly occurring? Why are those 3 things happening? Well, maybe my staff aren't very good on the coffee machines and they're wasting a lot of coffee. So they don't understand how to use the equipment. Maybe they're making mistakes and they're not doing lovely latte art and the milk's spreading out. Or they're taking too long to make products and customers are complaining because it's just taking so long. Okay, so we've got low productivity rates. Net profit figures are down and a lot of wastage in our coffee. Well, clearly our staff aren't doing a good job there, and training, giving them better skills and knowledge on the equipment will help resolve that. And once they're better trained, they can be quicker at production, make better quality coffees, and have less wastage of milk and coffee grounds. So you can see again, we're developing the story and explaining how the strategy we've got in mind here can help to deal with the problems of the key performance indicators. So have in your head, I think of the next one, but again, you should be able to see the journey across from one side to the other, explaining the full story. Okay, our next strategy is staff motivation. Okay, remember this is about that desire, that want to do things. Okay, and in business, we want the manager wanting the employees to be motivated to do the things that will achieve the business objectives. So if you remember, there's a lot of strategies we can use here. We can use performance-related pay, career advancement, getting people thinking about promotions, investment in training, okay, so giving them some time to go on courses and pay for those, supporting the workers, and in some cases having some sanctions, effectively punishments for people who don't do things. And that's the motivation, okay, to avoid those sanctions. Now, again, there's a lot more detail in earlier lessons, so hopefully a lot of that's a bit of a recap for you. Yes, I remember those, okay? If you want more detail, click on these links here and be thinking, how can staff motivation strategies help solve some key performance issue problems we have in the business? All right, so let's take another example and we'll do the same thing. We're going to take this strategy. How can we apply this strategy of staff motivation to deal with some key performance indicators? Okay, so here's our lovely florist business that's going on. And I want you to be thinking now about how we can use staff motivation. So let's pretend that in our florist business, we've got low productivity rates. We're not producing many bouquets of flower per hour, okay? We've got low number of sales. Customers aren't buying our flowers. The flowers that we are having and sending out there, we're getting a high number of customer complaints coming back. And we're finding also that the percentage of market share in the florist industry is low and falling, okay? We're losing sales to our competitors. So there's clearly something going wrong. So using analysis, we're trying to think, okay, why might this be occurring? Well, maybe staff are demotivated. They're coming up to work, fed up, had a bad day, not really bothered, okay? And they're not performing their jobs to their full potential. So they're not creating nice bouquets of flowers. They're not dealing with issues as they arise. And they're just very lackluster in their whole approach. Well, clearly you can see productivity would be slow if they're lackluster. The sales would be down because they're not really pursuing that. Okay, the customer complaints says you're doing poor customer service. So all of those things are happening. So clearly, if we embrace the strategy of staff motivation, we can hopefully do something about this. We can hopefully make them willing to work harder. Okay, we might be willing to contribute additional ideas for the betterment of the business. So if we embrace something like a strategy of performance-related pay and pay people according to the number of bouquets they made, that could be a real motivation for them to do more bouquets. Or as an alternative strategy could be investment in training, that they feel special about investment in training and that they feel rewarded and recognized, and so they're going to perform better. It could be support as a strategy where, okay, I'm going to help you and guide you because we need you to work on that. Again, that's the strategy that then levers on to have the staff motivated. And hopefully with these more motivated staff, the productivity levels go up, customers get a better service from the employees, and all those employees are willing to suggest more ideas and innovation to improve the business. So again, hopefully you can see how staff motivation is a great strategy to deal with some of those problems. Now again, for yourselves, have a go and see if you can follow your own journey through these points here to see how a story can be connected to those KPIs and how motivation helps with that. Okay, the next strategy you want to look at is changing a management style or changing or implementing different management skills. Okay, so again, hopefully a lot of you are going, I heard of this again before, way back in Unit 3, Area Study of 1. If you want more detail, click on these links here and you can go and see that. But ultimately, what we're talking about here is changing the style or skills that a manager is using to have a positive impact on maybe motivation, performance, or the ability to meet the business objectives. So it's a quick recap. Okay, if you remember them, autocratic, persuasive, consultative, participative, and laissez-faire. Okay, so those are our styles. And we talked about having like one or two-way communication and who's making the decision. And we were conscious that under certain situations, you would use certain styles. So clearly here, if a situation changes or the key performance indicators tell us something going wrong, then maybe we can change the style to fix that. So that's the idea, that we're maybe going to change it based upon the situation to achieve the objectives we want to do. Equally, we've got our skills of communicating, delegating, planning, leading, decision-making, and interpersonal, reading the relationships of the groups. Now, maybe those skills could be used as strategies to deal with issues that are emerging in the business. So let's take that knowledge and see how we can apply it. Okay, so let's take this scenario here where we have a marketing company, a very creative marketing company with a very autocratic manager telling you what to do. Okay, now in this very autocratic style, we've got some KPIs coming through that are telling us that there's an increasing rate of staff absenteeism. More staff are taking days off. Okay, we've also got a higher rates of staff turnover. Staff are literally leaving us at the end of the year and need to be replaced. Okay, so that's an issue. So why is that possibly occurring with my autocratic, stern, one-way communication style? Well, maybe employees are feeling undervalued for their opinions or scared of my autocratic approach. So if that's going to be the situation, then we need to change the style. So if you can imagine in the marketing company, you've got here workers who are creative. They're trying to come up with new products, new advertising jingles, slogans, brands. They're all very creative people. And you've got someone who's being very autocratic, one-way communication in a very decisive, determined manner. So that's probably constraining their creativity and leading to them leaving. So as a strategy, if we just change from autocratic to consultative, if we get the manager to be thinking about how they communicate with their staff and allow for two-way communication and consultative, they can still make the final decision, but they're going to get that input from these very creative people. So the situation is going to be better suited to a consultative approach. So by doing that, hopefully employees will feel more valued. They can voice their opinions, and therefore the impact will hopefully be these employees are now more engaged, want to work, and the idea of the staff absenteeism and the staff turnover falls down. So you can see by implementing that strategy, we can address the problems we've got from the key performance indicators. So do the same thing again in your head with this one here, where we have low productivity rates. How can changing the style resolve that problem? Now, the second point was skills. Okay, so another strategy we can have is skills here. So imagine and think about if we've got a high number of customer complaints. If we're in our advertising marketing company, why might that be occurring? Well, maybe the manager is keeping control of all the decisions, slowing the ability for the employees to respond to customers' issues. When they're not happy about the advertisement we've created, rather than trying to resolve it themselves, they're having to go all the way up through to the manager and seek their approval and response. It's slowing it all down. And so we're getting a higher number of customer complaints. So instead, if we had a delegation skill positively embraced by the manager, they're going, okay, no, I can't control everything. I'm going to delegate tasks while keeping the overall accountability. I can delegate the responsibility to other members. Now, we've got some talented individuals, I'm sure, in this creative process. So by delegating tasks to marketing employees to resolve, they're going to feel better. They're going to be able to resolve them quicker. And then hopefully we're going to have more motivated staff and the manager can focus on other tasks. So dealing with that will resolve these customer complaints far quicker. So hopefully you can see from this lesson here, we can look at styles or skills as strategies to respond to key performance indicators in our business. Okay, our next strategy is cost cutting. Now this one should resonate some bells for you, okay? It's not a specific strategy you've studied already, but you have heard of it before when we've talked about business expenses, about reducing business expenses to try and generate more profit. The idea being that profit is revenue minus expenses. And if we can cut our costs, if we can squeeze these expenses and reduce them, then hopefully we'll make more profit. So Key takeaway here, cost cutting or reducing expenses should improve a business's net profit figures. If the cost savings translate into cheaper prices, so if in theory, if we save some money, we can translate that into cheaper prices for customers, this will lead to hopefully increased numbers of sales and also the benefit of increased percentage of market share. So it's definitely a strategy that's going to be valuable to us in the business. So let's first of all think about what costs are we actually going to cut. So what are the major business costs in our business? So we think about it, like one of them could be raw materials. Okay, say we're making our beloved chocolates. Okay, the cost of the chocolate beans, the cocoa beans, is an expense. And if we can reduce the cost of those beans, then we reduce the raw materials. So the idea being is we might seek lower cost suppliers, either domestically or globally. So if those cocoa beans are too expensive, where is an alternative place or an alternative supplier that we can get them from, whether within our own country or overseas? Another reason that the cost might be high is maybe we've got a lot of wastage going on. Okay, so as we're making these chocolate bars, that there's a lot of wasteful in the machinery and the floor, and we're discarding a lot, and it's ending up in landfill. Terrible. Okay, so if we use a strategy like lean management, we could be thinking about getting everything to run more smoothly and reduce wastage, which would therefore mean that the cost for raw materials would go down. We're not wasting as much. Okay, another business cost, a big one for businesses, is labor. Okay, they're employees. For some service industries, it could be 70 or 80% of the total business costs are associated with the labor that's providing that service. Lowering salary costs is a way of cost cutting in that area. How do we do that? Well, unfortunately, in some situations, it literally is redundancy programs. If we don't have the staff on our payroll lists because we've made them redundant, then that reduces the cost for them. Okay, we might also source those employees from outside of our business. We might, rather than have our own human resource department, source that from outside the business and get someone else to do that job for us, and therefore we haven't got to pay the workers directly, cutting our costs. We might go for overseas manufacturer. The idea being there that we have a lower labor cost in overseas countries for making our chocolate bars, and therefore by employing overseas workers to do it, the cost of labor goes down associated with that. Or ultimately even replacing labor with technology. The idea being that rather than have people working on the production line making chocolate bars, a machine could replace them. All of those are potential ways of saving or cost cutting in the labor area. Where else can we save costs? We can also save costs in our equipment. Okay, by seeking cheaper sources of equipment. If we've got really expensive machinery producing these chocolate bars, is there a cheaper alternative that we could use instead? And equally, our location, our actually facilities. Okay, if we've bought them outright, that's a big cost. Maybe we could rent instead, and maybe we could reduce the costs for cheaper locations or move to a work from home model, whereby workers only need to come in for a short period of time and we don't need so many floors in the office, okay? Or we don't need so many areas set up, so we can reduce the actual costs of the infrastructure that supports our business. So if you can see here, there are lots of business costs, and what we're looking at in this strategy is how do we reduce those costs to try and improve the business profit figures and lead to benefits for the objectives of the business throughout. Now, if you can think about it, although we haven't looked at this cost-cutting area in specific by itself, it has links, okay? So that idea about redundancies, we've covered before in human resources. We've covered lean management and operations management, and global considerations as well, also in operations management. So we can link in more detail if you want to by clicking on here, but hopefully you can see how we can use this strategy to resolve some KPI issues and hopefully achieve our business objectives. So again, let's apply to an example here. We're going to be a clothing manufacturer. Let's make some like cool merch, okay? We're going to have some t-shirts and maybe some surfwear or something like that. So we're a clothing manufacturer. Have that in your head. What might be going wrong if we have low net profit figures? Okay, what could be the cause? So let's use our thinking hat. What might this be indicating? Well, the low net profit figures might be indicating to us that our labor force costs are too high, that we've got a very expensive payroll to pay off, and that cost is making and squeezing our profit figures. The idea being revenue minus expenses. If these expenses are really big, it's squeezing our profit. And maybe also that our raw material costs are too high. The cotton that's going into our clothing is costing us too much money. Okay, so we would hopefully be looking at cost cutting as a way to try and have a better impact and address those profit figures. So how could we do that? Well, if it was related to the labor force, maybe unfortunately a redundancy program or outsourcing, overseas manufacturer, or replacing with technology could help lower the salary costs, and that could help deal with it. Or if it's about raw materials, maybe we could look for lower cost suppliers of inputs around the world. Hopefully the impact would then be reductions in costs. Okay, we get reduced costs, which can then lead to reduced prices and then make the clothing more competitive. If it's more competitive, more people buy it, our revenue goes up, and hopefully we've responded to our low net profit figures. Equally, we've got to be concerned, though, that by getting rid of staff, we might get employee morale damaged, okay? If the employee morale is damaged, stepping that out, that might lead to poorer quality products. That might lead to a lower customer reputation. So it's something to consider that by doing this strategy, it might necessarily have a worse impact on the net profit figures. Equally, you might have to be thinking that the new arrangements with global suppliers may also have a negative reaction from the suppliers and the general community. People want to buy Australian. And when they find out that you're not sourcing your materials from Australia, that might have a negative repercussion. So these impacts need to be thought about both in a positive and negative sense. So think, by having this strategy, is it going to help solve the problem or worsen the situation? Okay? Now do the same for yourself. Find a story here that links the idea of using cost cutting to solve the key performance indicator problem that we have in the business. So let's bring this all together. And again, we've mentioned our little friendly penguin here. These strategies are like your toolkit box, okay? So you've been thinking, okay, something's happened. Which of the tools in business strategies can I use to solve that problem, okay? So let's pretend we are a small boutique Belgian chocolate manufacturing business, okay? So we're making beautiful Belgian chocolates, okay? And we've just found that we've got increasing rising customer complaints. More people are complaining than ever before. Okay, what could we do about that? Okay, so we have our toolkit. Which one could we use here? So if the rising customer complaints, we could be thinking in ourselves, well, maybe people aren't enjoying our chocolates. Why might that be occurring? Well, maybe the staff aren't producing them properly. Yeah, that could be an issue, that they're not getting good quality chocolates. So maybe I could use staff training as my strategy from my toolkit to resolve that issue. And by training my staff better, they will perform better and produce better quality chocolates, and we'll have less complaints. Yes. Let's take another one. Okay, maybe we've got falling net profit figures. We were making $1,000 from our chocolates, but now that's only $10. Okay. Again, let's break this one down. We're thinking, okay, so profit figures are revenue minus expenses. We were making $1,000, now we're only making $10. Okay, what could we do to solve that problem? Maybe we could use cost cutting. Maybe the raw material costs us too much for the cocoa beans, and we could use alternative suppliers. That will reduce our costs, which will mean that we're going to make more profit. Equally, though, maybe it's an issue to do with staff motivation, and we've got very demotivated staff. Well, if we invest in motivation strategies like performance-related pay or investment in training, then maybe they get more motivated, they produce better quality chocolates faster. Okay, we get more revenue from the sales, and then lo and behold, we make better profits. So you can see we have our toolkit, and you'll be trying to be thinking which strategy works to resolve that problem. And sometimes there'll be more than one solution. Okay, so you want to be feeling that this is how you're going to play it. That you're going to use these different strategies to solve different problems. Well done. So in summary, you can see here our trusted penguin with all of these strategies at play. Within this lesson, we've covered staff training, motivation, changing management styles and skills, and cost cutting as ways of responding to key performance indicators. So we've looked at a few tools, strategies that we can use to respond to these key performance indicators. And in our next lesson, we'll look at a whole bunch more. So I look forward to seeing you then.